Okay, here we go. I haven't been in the studio for a while. Okay. Hey guys, what's up? It's your man Pete. So I came across this article recently. Shout out to CTV News for writing this post because I wanted to do the research on this particular type or style of video or article for a while, but I've just been too busy. For those of you who don't particularly like to read, I love reading articles myself, but I thought I would do this in video form and of course give you my sort of insights into what the research and what the numbers really mean. Maybe it might open up some potential ideas for you in terms of affordability and places that you might want to buy into. But yeah, it's been no surprise that the Toronto and GTA housing market has been absolutely on fire for the past 25 years or so. So also shout out to RE/MAX Canada for actually putting together this report. We're going to dig into the top 8 markets in the GTA and Toronto region that have performed the best over the last 2.5 decades. So we'll see you guys on the other side right after this. Okay, and we're back. So way back in 1996, about 25 years ago, home prices in Toronto were just under $200,000 as an average. And fast forward 25 years later, and it's basically 5x'd from there, where the average home price was $1,095,475. Pretty sure those numbers were based off of 2021's final tally numbers. And during this long sustained real estate boom, $1.1 trillion of properties have changed hands during this time. That's an incredible amount for the Canadian economy, and especially for the local region here. And I know all the talk these days is all about inflation, right? Over that time, the report indicated that home prices have averaged about a 7% increase on an annual basis in order for us to arrive at these new sale prices, which pretty much keeps up with inflation and then some. But of course, that acceleration really depends on where you live, and it really depends on how much it started with 25 years ago, depending on the different areas, neighborhoods in the city. And they pointed in the report and in this article that what was really remarkable was this incredible gain and increase during multiple rounds of crises and things that happened. We had the internet tech boom bubble that basically popped in 2000, and we had 9/11 right after that. We had SARS, and of course the massive recession of 2008, and then of course where we still are right now during COVID-19 2 years later. So that's why I've been saying all along on this channel that property and real estate in Toronto really is better than gold. You know, it preserves its value, it continues to grow because the demand is pretty much insatiable here. And so during inflationary times and during, times of really easy lending and credit policy, there are other factors at play here. And I talk about it a lot on my channel. It's really sort of the generational shift. It's a demographic shift, where once a long time ago we had houses, 25 years ago, we had houses where there were 3 or 4 kids in one household. Fast forward 25 years later, they've grown up and they all need to purchase properties themselves. But we just haven't been building enough of them, especially on low-rise houses. So unfortunately, we are headed towards higher density living, sort of stacked back-to-back townhouses in the outer regions of Toronto, not just inside of Toronto, but, pretty far out these days. And we're definitely seeing in the pre-sales and pre-construction market. And actual residential transactions were up 118%, so basically double from 1996 to 2021. And that's really just a testament to the population growth and the incredible demand for property here in the Greater Toronto area. But in this video, we're going to break down the 8 regions and counties that have performed the best in the last 25 years, and I assure you these numbers are going to blow your mind. They definitely blew my mind when I saw them, even though I work in the business, I see it all the time, but sometimes it's just nice to see it in a report, over an extended period of time. You could probably have done a report over the last 5 or 10 years to see how incredible those numbers have been, because honestly, prices and demand has actually accelerated. But they decided to do a 25-year history because basically the real estate boom has lasted for about 25 years already on this sort of sustained long trajectory, and now it's actually accelerating, going up even faster. So here we go. We'll start with number 8. So surprisingly, Toronto Central showed up as number 8 on this list, and prices were up just a bit over 300% from 1996 to 2021, leaving Toronto Central at an average price of just over $1 million, pretty much right at $1 million. And this could be surprising to some. It certainly was a little bit surprising to me, but then when I thought about it and I dug down a little bit deeper, it makes a little bit more sense. If we were to separate the single detached freehold properties from, say, the higher density living like condos or townhouses, I think that number would actually slant much, much higher, because obviously Toronto Central is the most expensive per square foot. It's the epicenter of Toronto. It's pretty much everything up and down Yonge Street, maybe 1 or 2 major streets to the east, 1 or 2 major streets to the west. That's basically central Toronto. It's, the main hub, or the center of the city, perhaps the center of the entire country. And so everything is measured against what prices are happening in central Toronto. But of course, we have to use average numbers here, right? And so when we pull in the average of, really expensive detached freehold properties, even luxury properties, and then we mix that in with sort of higher density, smaller properties, condos, townhouses, it really only gets us an average of $1 million in central Toronto. But we're really talking about two different stories here if we had to separate higher density with freehold living. But again, kind of surprising it showed up at number 8. Okay, number 7, Dufferin County. So Dufferin County went up 334% in that same period of time over the last 25 years. It has gone up to an average price of $803,000, which to be honest doesn't sound too expensive. You've definitely seen that major benefit of people moving out, moving further out to try to get more space to actually be able to afford to buy a single detached property. So at an average price of around $800,000 doesn't seem too bad, especially if you don't have to work downtown, and even if you do, you could still probably take the train down there. It's just the acceleration of the work from home phenomenon or the hybrid working model has really allowed people to live further out. This was already happening pre-pandemic, but it's definitely happening now, and it's probably going to be here to stay. At around $800,000, very, very affordable, very, very doable for many young families. Number 6, Halton Region. So Halton Region in the past was always a place that people went to because it was a little bit cheaper. You could buy a single detached property in places like Milton or perhaps Burlington. Oakville was always a little bit unattainable from a single family housing perspective, but then we're also starting to see a lot of condos being built in Oakville as well too, and even in Burlington, and now even in Milton. The average price there went up 446% over the last 25 years, which is incredible, reaching an average of $1.232 million, which makes it actually one of the most expensive on average on this entire list of properties and regions all across the GTA. I suspect that in this region, as we see more higher density coming to play here, like condos and townhouses, that might pull their average price down just a little bit because they've always been house and townhouse heavy, which, as we all know, townhouses are all starting at $1 million now. But yeah, the growth happening in Halton Region, in particular in places like Burlington and Milton, are just extraordinary. They're actually considered very desirable places to live, unlike it was 25 years ago. Okay, and now number 5 on the list is Toronto East. So when we talk about Toronto East, we're talking about like sort of Riverdale, we're talking about East York, the beaches. So that area has gone up 452.9%, so basically 4.5 times it's gone up in 25 years, reaching an average price of $1,095,000 and some change. And Toronto East was really where things really started happening. For those who aren't familiar, that was a time in sort of the late 90s and early 2000s when people started occupying places like Riverdale, Leslieville, and East York because they wanted to be close to the city. They wanted to be close to the core. A lot of people were working downtown, and so really in a lot of these locations, you just had to take one streetcar or one bus and you're pretty much at a subway station or you're pretty much right at work. And then of course, we've also started to see some higher density show up in those areas as well too. Typically the houses, you will find a lot of smaller houses. You won't find a lot of large detached homes. And so I think that's sort of what's keeping the prices just a little bit manageable here in Toronto East. And then also we've been seeing more condos and townhouses, stacked townhouses being built in the area too. And so as an average, we're really only at about 1.1 million, but really start getting into the freehold properties, yeah, we're talking $1.5 million for semis, $2 million for completely detached homes. And now number 4, Toronto West. So Toronto West has gone up 468% over the last 25 years, landing at an average of just under $1 million at $997,000. And so again, it's that mix and that pull of, more expensive properties and less expensive properties like condos and townhouses. But generally, also, Toronto West has always been an area where it's been a little bit more affordable. Again, you have a similar situation where you have smaller properties, lots of bungalows, lots of semis. And so you find that the prices don't get too insane. They don't get too ridiculous in these areas simply because in the past, those areas were built for affordability. So the homes don't have a large footprint, but over the last 10 or 15 years, it's become a desirable place to live because, again, there's TDC access, there's bus, there's subways, there's all different types of things. In the future, there's going to be the LRT as well too. So it's really become part of central Toronto, but obviously not the same prices as central Toronto. Of course, definitely a lot of older properties that need to be turned around, and so that's why prices are somewhat still manageable, and I would highly encourage you to look in those areas if the space and the location works for you. Number 3 on the list is actually Peel Region. Peel Region went up 495%, almost 500% over the last 25 years, landing at an average price of $1,052,000, which, to be honest to me, makes a whole lot of sense. Everywhere sort of surrounding Toronto in the 905 region, houses are a little bit bigger. There's more land, there's more space, there's backyards, backyards, there's 2-car garages. These are the types of homes that most families really want to end up at, right? They want to have a house where, they're not attached to any neighbors, they're not paying any maintenance fees. They have the freedom and the will to do whatever they want and to take care of their property and just pretty much find a place where their family can grow with 3, 4, or maybe even 5 bedrooms. And so it doesn't really surprise me that Peel region, which includes Brampton, Mississauga, Caledon, in the past these places were considered really far, but these days it's not, which is quite ironic because we always thought that maybe everybody would want to live inside the city, they would want to be close to downtown, they want to be close to midtown, uptown, but still, at the end of the day, regardless of whether there was a pandemic or not, people want more space, especially people who are having families. If you're not having families, or you're a single person, or you're just planning to get married and you don't need a lot of space, you don't need a lot of bedrooms, yeah, you could probably live in the city and buy a 2-bedroom townhouse. That's probably going to be good enough for you. Okay, and number 2. This one's a bit surprising, but I mean, not all that surprising. Durham region was actually number 2 in the fastest or the most accelerated price gains. They were up 507.6%, so basically 5x from 25 years ago, landing at an average price of $925,000 and some change, which, to be honest, in this market is still really good. It's still really affordable. So in the past, Durham region has always suffered from having, a bad reputation. Crime rates are a little bit higher. School system is just okay. But because of the affordability now, like it's still much cheaper. It's still sub $1 million to be able to go out and buy a house or at least a townhouse out there. Well, I mean, it's really just a stacked townhouse at $925,000 these days. Really doesn't surprise me that they're number 2 and if not even number 1 on this list because, their prices were always a little bit lower. And so they also had the biggest room to come up from, compared to, say, Central Toronto, which showed up at number 8, probably their prices were pretty high already, comparatively speaking, even 25 years ago. And so that percentage increase isn't a real indication. So what happened was Central Toronto basically sets the prices, and then everything else is measured against that. And so, as the city becomes more and more populated and more expensive, people have to go further and further out to get more house, but they're basically paying about the same prices or maybe just a little bit cheap. So people have been bullish about Durham region for a long time. I was bringing investors out in 2015 and 2016 to buy investment properties in those areas already. So, you're welcome, guys. But yeah, so they just had the biggest jump and they've been coming like gangbusters over the last couple of years, and especially during the pandemic over the last 2 years. So keep an eye out for Durham region, and I fully expect more people to move out there, especially if they want to buy that single detached home or a semi or even just a really nice townhouse. Lots of growth potential out there. They're still building new houses. I would definitely keep an eye on Durham region as it continues to grow and it's still affordable. I would highly recommend looking out there in some of the nicer pockets. Okay, and here we go. Number 1. What is number 1 on the list of the fastest growing and highest price gains over the last 25 years here in the Toronto and GTA region? And it's none other than York region. York region went up an astonishing 875%. Is that a typo? Reaching an average of $1.291 million. Okay, and of course, if I had to give an explanation for it again, is that there wasn't a lot of high-rise living. There wasn't a lot of condos in York region. It's mostly houses, and it still is today. So prices are being driven and pulled up in these areas completely by houses and freehold properties alone, which, as we all know, because you watch my channel, those ones accelerate the most in price because people are not paying maintenance fees, right? They're getting more space, they're getting more land. To be honest, York region isn't considered that far anymore when people have to go all the way out to like Hamilton and Cambridge and London, 2 hours away. That's insane. And I'm still incredibly bullish on York region. I think if you have the opportunity and you've got the budget, you should definitely think about buying in places like Vaughan, Richmond Hill, Markham, Stouffville, Newmarket, Aurora, and now East Gwillimbury. So that's really where the families are going. That's definitely where a lot of the immigrants are going who are incredibly cash rich. And so prices are getting bid up, but in a way it's justified because we're not talking about condos here. We're not talking about stacked townhouses here. We're mostly talking about freehold, detached properties, most of them double car garage. So just thought I would share that with you guys. You could read the article here. It's actually probably faster to read the article than to watch my video, but of course you watch the video because you want to hear me talk, right? You want to hear my insights and my analysis and what I think, right? So these were the top 8 best markets to be in over the last 25 years here in the Toronto and GTA region. York region just completely blew everybody out of the water. It just wasn't even close. But I hope from this list, it gives you a sense of where you think you might want to be able to buy into, where you think you could afford to get into. If your budget is around $1 million or just over $1 million, maybe you can get yourself into a townhouse in those areas. Definitely in places like York region, in Durham and in Peel, still lots of opportunities, still lots of growth potential. And if you want space and you want to live in a proper house, you're ready to upsize and make that next step, that next level, give us a shout here at Selling Toronto. We'd be happy to help you out. And if you like this video, please make sure you subscribe, give us a thumbs up, leave us a comment. We would really appreciate it. It helps us with the algorithm. And if you're ready for direct service, counseling, advice, and guidance, then you know who you're going to contact for that, right? Contact is in the description below and also at the end of the video. We would be happy to help you out. But for now, enjoy watching the videos and we'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.
I'm pretty sure those numbers were based on what finished. I'm pretty sure those numbers were based off of 2021's finished